The latest on the Giannis front, and now we know who the coach is. We know where the Bucks will be picking. What else is there to figure out this summer? We get the thoughts of Frank Madden coming up after this.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined today by Frank Madden. On today's show, we get into the summer so far, not even summer yet, but the offseason so far for the Bucks as we had our press conference for Taylor Jenkins. We have had the draft lottery, and now we wait for the NBA draft and everything to unfold leading up to that. So what Frank has an eye on, some thoughts from the past week here with the Taylor Jenkins press conference and the draft lottery itself. But we start with Taylor Jenkins, Frank, and we've talked with you since the hiring was announced and became official. But anything that really stood out to you from that press conference? I suppose one of the things to get into was, and I think this came out in the side session that Jimmy Haslam did with Eric and Jim after the press conference, where I forget how it was worded specifically, but I think it's certainly notable in this case that Jimmy's message was something along the lines of, we stress to Taylor Jenkins, don't make this decision based on Giannis. So knowing that and hearing everything else that took place at the press conference, what do you read into that?
Obviously nobody can really guarantee Taylor Jenkins that Giannis is going to want to be around and that he will be around. So that part was not at all surprising. I think everyone would have expected that, at best he could say like something nice about Giannis, but, like blah, 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 we'll have to see how things kind of shake out. I do think the Haslam comments were notable. On the one hand, they echoed kind of the general comment that Wes Edens had made. I forget if that was Ramona Shelburne or who had that piece a little while ago.
Ramona.
That was basically like, Giannis will be extended or he'll be traded, which in and of itself is like entirely sort of logical, right? That you don't want to go into the season with him not signing an extension and then, you're kind of facing this cliff next summer if you don't trade him by the deadline that, he could potentially sign elsewhere. Although I will also note, like, the odds of Giannis going to free agency without signing an extension and then being able to leave without the Bucks is likely extremely low. That said, your leverage to get, real value is also like a lot lower at that point. So, again, like it's not, I don't think you likely would be in a, you're getting nothing from scenario, but I also don't think the Bucks have any reason to, leave that to chance. So I think the timeline that Jimmy Haslam said out loud, basically like we need to get this solved by draft night, made sense to me because it's the exact thing that I've been saying for the last like month, that basically they need to pick a lane and then go down that, because if you're trading Giannis, you want to trade him with the possibility of getting 2026 draft picks that you can use. You could argue with the Bucks draft history, maybe you'd rather let other teams make the picks.
You could just ask them, like, before you trade it to us, who were you thinking of taking?
Who do you think we should pick? But we should say in all seriousness as well, like once teams pick guys as well, like I think there is like a real effect where like that is now like your guy. You don't want to then just trade him. We have seen it happen. It was obviously a historically unique situation, but yeah, I mean, if you wanted to make moves that involved getting assets from this draft, you got to do it by draft night. And likewise, if the Bucks went the other way, Eric wrote an article kind of talking about this idea of two parallel paths, exploring both the rebuild, trade Giannis for stuff versus the trade your remaining stuff to get Giannis help and hope that he, under the assumption that he's extending. Um, if you're going down that ladder path, then obviously the fact that you have the number 10 pick in this draft, that's the best draft asset that you're going to have for
Yeah.
quite a while now. A 2031 unprotected pick certainly has value because that could be anything. But also most GMs that you're trading with would rather get a number 10 pick right now than have to wait 5 years for some hypothetical
If
pick.
they don't even know if they're going to be on the job 5 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, on the other hand, that pick will have a lot of value over the next 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to
Yeah.
make trades, although apparently Joe Dumars won't value it very much, but the rest of the league probably would. Um, so so I think it's a very entirely logical the Bucks would want to get this figured out by draft night. Um, Again, to say it out loud, I'm curious, if the Bucks, front office had that to workshop again, would they have wanted to kind of maybe not go there as far as timeline? Um, but again, probably anybody from other teams, people aren't stupid, right? The same reason why I
Right.
saying it is the same reason why other teams would probably assume that that's the case. But to me, this is a kind of the unfortunate part of this is just that the timing of not being able to offer the extension until October puts you into this weird purgatory because
Yeah.
of course you can ask Giannis well, we will offer you the extension in October. Are you going to sign it? And again, I just think the dynamic here is if you're Giannis, you're going to say, I don't know. What kind of team am I going to have by October? And the Bucks are going to say, I don't know.
We don't know.
And
Yeah.
they would probably say, if you if you are willing to sign here, I'm guessing the Bucks are not going to make any promises that we're going to go trade all our picks for help. Um,
Yeah.
but they're in this weird spot where I think they probably explore it. But then what do you do if you have a trade to get a win now piece on draft night? Are you calling us up and saying hey buddy, is this good enough? Are you willing to soft commit to an extension 4 months from now if we trade
Yeah.
for player XYZ? So you just get yourself in this really weird position, right? Because I don't think the Bucks want to be in a position where they have to ask. I mean, they didn't want to do this before, but asking Giannis permission to make trades and things like that. That's not where I think anybody wants to be. I don't think Giannis wants to be given that sort of control power either necessarily.
Yeah.
So again, I think it just leads us to this inevitable situation where the Bucks are probably going to use that pick, or they're not going to do something extremely win now oriented. Given I don't think Giannis is going to have committed at that point, and so I think the natural inclination is that they will say, well, all right, I guess Giannis is making us feel like we have to try to, probably trade him. And so again, given the likely market, I think there will be offers for him.
Yeah.
It may not be the haul that I think maybe some Bucks fans want, but I think there's going to be, young players plus future draft pick type packages that will be available to them. And how much those offers are probably depend a little bit on eventually, the kind of next shoe to drop is, does Giannis, create a list basically of teams that he's going to say, I'll definitely extend with 6 months from trade or not. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it just seems like I started the offseason saying 60-40 Giannis is traded. A year ago I was the opposite. I think it's certainly gone higher. And I think, it's just I think they've kind of been checkmated in that Giannis will be able to say I didn't ask for a trade. I didn't ask
Yeah.
for a trade. They wanted to trade me. And the Bucks are probably gonna trade him. And I don't know. I mean, there are much worse outcomes in terms of divorces among great players and their franchises. So hopefully, I mean, I hope it doesn't get ugly regardless of what happens. But it is just kind of a weird, potentially standoffish way to for this kind of for the greatest tenure in the team's history to seemingly be on track to end. So again,
Awkwardly.
I'm more
Yeah.
and again, I'll reiterate, as I've said, if people haven't heard me much over the last year, Giannis is the one of one for this franchise. I will forever believe you try to make it work with him.
Yeah.
But again, I think there's also an argument that like at this point, you're almost better off just moving on and seeing what's behind door number two. It's not going to be winning a lot of basketball games anytime soon, but again, it's just they've put themselves in a tough spot. I'm definitely more optimistic with Taylor Jenkins than it was
Yeah.
previously when we had Doc Rivers, but again, they've just put themselves in a tough spot.
Well, and that's the thing where we'll get into it more after the break. I don't know if I'm ready to say they won't be winning a lot of basketball games, but they're certainly not going to be like an upper tier title contender.
Yeah, contending at
That
the highest levels. Yeah.
right. That I mean, like we have to see everything that unfolds, what happens with 10, what else they do, but just having a more modern approach and a coach that was widely viewed as one of the 10 best before his firing, that's going to do a lot for where this team has been the past couple of years and put you in a spot where you're at least like, if we can stay healthy and like, if we assume some of these defensive principles are rounded out and we're going to play this certain way and we have health, like we believe we're going to be a playoff team. And then who knows where it goes from there. But it's not going to be, well, and then we have the best player in the series. So we feel like we can win any series that we're in. Like that's going to be the big difference for this team. You mentioned too what Eric put together about the two different paths that the Bucks could go. And I don't remember if it was Camille or someone else, but I had this conversation earlier in the day about that other path that we haven't really talked about yet. So I want to get your thought on that coming up after this. Well, the NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So you turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. On the FanDuel app, everything you need is all in one place. Stats, trends, matchups. You can get it all before you make your picks, making the whole experience a whole lot more informed. Whether you're looking at player props or just following your favorite stars, it adds another wrinkle to the excitement for every single game. And that app, easy to navigate, making playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And you can find the link to sign up for the Everdayer Club in the show notes of today's episode. When you join, you get ad-free episodes of Locked On Bucks and the exclusive invite to the members-only Discord as well. Again, the link to sign up for it in the show notes of today's episode in the podcast and on YouTube as well. So we have spent quite a bit of time going over the tiptoeing around. It feels like Giannis is going to be traded. So let's start to look at teams. And I know it's only going to get worse with packages and everything else. We haven't so much focused on that other path of, well, what about this? For me, the challenge with that is this, in that if we just take a step back and look at these teams that are currently playing in the playoffs and look at these teams that advanced a year ago and where this Bucks team is, like Philadelphia just did the same thing earlier today when they moved on from Daryl Morey, and there was some chatter maybe they would do the same with Nick Nurse as well. But the message coming out of Philly after that sweep at the hands of the Knicks was, we're not anywhere near close to where we need to be. And I mean, you can point to Giannis played in what was it, 36 games or whatever the number was this past season. You can point to the injuries for that and Kevin Porter Jr. But the Bucks were even further back than the Sixers. And when you look at what they have to offer, everybody keeps circling back to Bobby Portis and Kyle Kuzma's contracts. And sure, you have the 3 picks that you can throw in there too. But what you can get, the type of player for those contracts for what, like 35 million that they would total up to. I don't know that the player that you can get in return in the matching the 120% rule, like I don't, number one, I don't know who that is in a package deal like that. And I just don't know that there's a guy out there that you would look at and say, this is Giannis's running mate. This is number 2 that's at that level that puts us there, that it just feels like, no, anything you would do puts you back in the same spot, that it makes you top heavy. And I don't know that the player that you would get with those 2 contracts and picks is ultimately good enough. Like, I feel like that type of guy would be the third best player on a really good team when you need the number 2 guy. And I just feel like every door you open here, there you get more and more answers of it probably is time to just turn around and go back down that other path.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I always used like the Celtics as the example of like, how the hell did that team win 56 games, right? Like, and um that's also why I didn't view them losing to the Sixers as like, some colossal failure. I just viewed it as like their lack of talent kind of caught up with them against a team that, kind of figured everything out for a week basically and had, like all their dudes finally healthy. Um, but it's like look on the opposite side, right? Like, I mean, Detroit has a very good chance of going to the East Finals with Tobias Harris as their second best player, like,
Yeah.
and obviously like their defense, has been architected in a way that allows them to, win games even without, I mean, Jalen Duren never felt like, the second
With
best
their guy
player
that
on
was
a
supposed to be the
60-win
second best
team.
player just disappearing, yeah.
Right. Like, in spite of the fact that he's like an extremely like athletic, he's not a guy that like you would look at and be like, oh, that guy is going to get exposed defensively,
Yeah, this
right? No,
guy
he
got
hasn't been exposed
crucibled.
defensively.
Yeah,
Yeah, he just like can't do anything offensively all of a sudden.
yeah.
So again, like, you think you can look at a team on paper and just sort of figure out like, oh, yep, that's your one, that's your two, that's your three. Compare that to like my mental model of what a contending team looks like, and there's always going to be these sort of exceptions. And again, like the part of the problem is you had now 2.5 years of a coaching staff. I don't again like Doc is like the headliner, but I think the staff in general like never really found out a way to get more than the sum of their
Maximizing.
parts
Yeah.
and maximize kind of what the Bucks had. So I think that's the hard part for the Bucks is like, okay, so now now you're starting from a team on paper that is a 32-win team or whatever, and then you have to sort of say like, okay, now what are the deltas that like get us to 500? What are the deltas that get us to 45?
Yeah.
Is there some path that you could get to 50?
50, yeah.
And the easiest ones are, of course, always well, like Giannis plays 30 more games,
Yeah.
and KPJ is healthy and, like probably like kind of just close to what he was when he was healthy. And then probably the other big thing that I think, if you're trying to build an argument for the Bucks, like, right, reestablishing themselves as a relevant entity in the East, I think Ryan Rollins has to have like another
A jump.
leap, right?
Yeah.
That's
He's like an
probably like
all-star caliber player.
right. Or, like if he's like a 25-5 guy or something like that, and is part of like a very engaged, good defense, right? I think then you're in a different place. And so, but I think you're asking the right question, right? Like, what could you get with the 10th pick and those future picks and some of that matching salary? Like, who comes in using some of those assets and makes a difference? And I think I would probably think of it as two paths, right? There are the guys that you would like actually really want, right? Like the Trey Murphy types, right? Who
Yeah.
again, I don't think New Orleans is going to trade Trey Murphy, but like if you told me you could get Trey Murphy for a bunch of picks and just some matching salary, and now you have let's say Rollins, KPJ, you know AJ Green, the surprise mystery box of whatever Usman Jang can be. But like Trey Murphy is your starting small forward slash, small ball four,
You also
and you're
forgot to
not
mention
expecting,
Cormac Ryan and Jericho Sims.
yeah. And then you have Giannis and Miles Turner. Oh, okay. Like on paper, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's actually a pretty damn interesting team, right?
Yeah.
And compare that to starting five, like again, like Boston or Detroit, right? Like those teams are not like 1 through 5, like the cream of the crop, like super stud guys loaded 1 to 5, right? So again, like I think it's gonna. I think it means that Ryan Rollins has to take a big leap, and I think it means that Taylor Jenkins has to unlock this team in a way that Doc Rivers never could, and that we haven't seen any coach do since Mike
But,
Budenholzer was here
yeah.
in his last season. Um, but yeah, it's hard, and the clock is obviously ticking on Giannis, and you know, 50 games and injuries, could become the norm for Giannis, and that's what also may, depress his trade value to an extent. We'll have to
Yeah.
see, what that looks like. Sham saying the Bucks are open for business is like, to me, kind of a nothing burger. Like, yeah, like that. No, like we know that's going to
And
happen. So now the question is just, like what ultimately do those offers look like, and how many teams can you actually get engaged, right? And I think if you're the Bucks, again, like probably your best offers are going to be closer to like, Alperen Şengün and draft picks, or Evan Mobley and the few other assets that the Cleveland Cavaliers have. I think it's more stuff like that than,
yeah.
like Jalen Johnson and everything in Atlanta. Like, I don't think you're getting
Yeah.
like that sort of off, plan accordingly.
Well, and I mean, there's another interesting component to the assets that would be coming back with lottery reform. Um, but I think something Camille and I talked about on a recent show too, and I'm curious your thoughts on it in just the overall optics of a Giannis trade. So we'll get into that conversation coming up after this. Postseason's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite players, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag, and with DoorDash, fans have one too. They keep your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes on absolute point. The nights when your team stresses you out, let DoorDash become your post game therapy with whatever it is you need. Late night games and interviews hit, and suddenly you need something at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. Not just food, too, when you're pulling up to the group chat in real life. DoorDash for all those other tools that you need, phone chargers, whatever it is, you name it, DoorDash has got it for you. From tip off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, and whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash in your bag all season long. So I am somewhat curious too about, like, I don't know that a whole lot of GMs have um really figured out how to navigate this CBA quite yet, and I think that was a big reason why the Sixers and Daryl Morey ultimately agreed to part ways. That I think for the guy that kind of ushered in this modern style of play, and he's associated with more than any other front office person, at least for a big time. I don't think Philly ever got there in figuring out, because all the messes that they got out of, it seemed like they got back into it with the Paul George Bede extension. That there's some teams that have figured it out, but it still feels like a work in progress of what does being in the second apron actually mean. Is there a blueprint for we have to have this type of team? How important are draft picks? And can we lean into star driven teams anymore? So there's that hangs over it. And then also the lottery reform, which, I mean, no scenario is good for the Bucks until you get assets back. And I've talked about it when other people bring it up too, about Portland. Like, well, they could offer the Bucks their picks. Like, yeah, but I mean, number one, there's also added swaps on some of those picks now, and it just doesn't feel like you're getting anything back if somebody's saying, "You give me Giannis, and here I'm going to give you what you used to have." Like, okay, I mean, yeah, it helps
Yeah.
us, I guess, but it doesn't really feel like I got something in this trade. But like Portland, to have the Bucks' future picks, it's not like it's not value, but suddenly it's not quite as valuable when 1 through 10 has the same chance to get the number 1 pick. Conversely, for the Bucks, some of the offers that you would have said, well, those aren't really great picks. Now it changes somewhat, where you say, well, what if that team does get old and they just narrowly miss out, or it's Giannis and they can't replenish the second star and they're just kind of a middling team, as we saw here. Like, that could be the number 1 pick. So now we're suddenly more interested in it. So that makes it interesting to me in some of the picks that could potentially come back. But I do think ultimately, because of what your next 3 years look like, as you mentioned, it's going to have to be a combination of, like, you're certainly not going to get Giannis, but give us a really good player or multiple good-ish players and picks, and we're just going to have to cobble it together. And we have this hope that Ryan Rollins is going to continue to ascend as well. But for me, the bigger thing is, I think regardless of what happens, and there's a variety of ways it could go with, and the Journal Sentinel laid it out too, picks heavy teams, players and picks, or player specific. Regardless of what happens, the Bucks are going to lose the trade on the optics front. That whatever you bring back, people are going to look at and say, that's all you got for Giannis. And especially to your point of, are there going to be teams that just say, we're not willing to give as much because he's going to be 32 already and the leg injuries. So everybody is going to look at this and say, wow, the Bucks did not win that trade. But I think the reality is, in the long run, they're going to win. Like, it on the court. Like, there's something to be said for losing that guy that makes you as relevant as they've been for the past decade, and certainly tourism dollars and jersey sales and everything else that's going out, ticket sales too. But we just seldom see these types of trades work out. That it may look like in the short term, well, that's, I kind of expected more that they would get in this deal. But even having said that, it does feel like, if I had to bet on it, I would bet that the Bucks would ultimately be the more successful of those two sides in a trade.
Yeah, I was actually gonna at first I thought you were saying that it doesn't work out for the team trading the superstar, and I was about to say, like, well, I think the risk and the pressure is going to be more on wherever Giannis would go, which is what
Yeah.
you actually are saying. Yeah, I agree, because I mean, it's one thing, and again, I don't think OKC has any interest in, like, bringing
Yeah.
Giannis into the fold there, which I understand. Um, like, I think though, like, OKC would be a team that could, like, they literally have so many picks and so much talent, like they could make the Bucks actually a good offer, and
Mhm.
like Giannis could flame out or barely play or whatever, and like they could probably like get through
Well,
that
we
just fine.
we still got
Yeah,
Shea, and we still got this. Yeah.
exactly, right. Just like a billionaire wrecking their Ferrari and just saying, like, buy a new one. Um, but for most teams, that's not the case, and this is sort of like, the big bite at the apple you have, right? Or, like a team like New York, like basically the Mikal Bridges deal was basically the bite at the apple that they had for a star, and they used
Mhm.
it early on a guy who's not a typical star. And like the first two rounds obviously were very up and down, so we'll see kind of what version of Mikal Bridges they get. Um, but and the Bucks have lived their own version of that, right? With first the Drew Holiday trade and then the Dame Lillard trade.
Yeah.
But I again, the Bucks are an example of a team that made that big trade and they won a championship with Drew Holiday. And so, it forever will be worth it, even as we're now feeling the pain of some of those outgoing draft picks at a time when we would really like to have draft, like those draft picks,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think the reality is that, you make those gambles because if it pays off, whatever you're the player, the coach or whatever, you don't you're spending the rest of your life having people buy you drinks, right? Because you hung a banner. And the Dame Lillard trade was then the exact opposite, right? So we've seen both sides of that coin, because the Dame trade blew up in like one of the more spectacular ways it possibly could, right? The Bucks literally got a short, we did get the NBA Cup banner, respect the NBA Cup, hashtag respect the cup.
We got
But
that first half against the Pacers too.
yeah, game one, first half of game one, 35 points. That was magical. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, like I think it just seems like we know where this is heading. Um, and I don't know, but I am really curious, like, what Giannis's sort of psychology is around this, because
Yeah.
I'm guessing that he probably has at least some. Giannis is a smart guy. I think he probably has some awareness of, and I think he's even like really alluded to this in some interviews, like because he's done so many interviews, none of which probably really helped him all that much. But I think he sort of alluded to the fact that, like, if he goes to some team and he doesn't win a championship, like, I mean, like, is Thanasis and are Thanasis and Alex going to be on that roster? How popular are they going to be? When if Giannis misses 30 games and doesn't play in the playoffs and the team flames out and yada yada, and then he's getting paid $70 million a year, and he's 34 and still very good, but not the guy that, like, obviously we knew
Yeah.
all these years. There's just, like, the reason that you made your statement is the reason why probably, like, Giannis would probably have at least some anxiety if he's, clear-headed about it. That there's real downside in leaving Milwaukee. Because if he stays in Milwaukee,
Yeah.
like, the downside is, like, just kind of the external noise, and the frustration of not, winning and contending. But, like, like, is he ever going to? He's never going to be hated, right? Like, people still love Thanasis and are entirely tolerant of, like, Alex getting a two-way despite, like, having done nothing to
Look, if
deserve
he
it. Like,
stays here, we could get a Bronny moment at some point too. Like, just
I mean, Costas is probably the second best
well,
Antetokounmpo
I'm
in
talking
terms of
about
actual
prolong his
basketball
career, and
talent.
we could get
But
Giannis and Liam on the same team.
is Liam or Maverick the oldest one? I
I
can't
thought it
remember.
was Liam, but now I can't
Okay,
remember.
yeah. Um, so Giannis, if you want to do four Antetokounmpos on the same floor, forget three. Not one, not two, not three, four Antetokounmpos playing together. You're not doing that probably in any of these other cities. So that's what we can offer is nepotism. High tolerance of nepotism is one of the advantages that you have in Milwaukee. So I don't know.
Well,
It's very interesting, but, like, and it's also funny. It's like, if he goes someplace, I'm very curious. I feel like there would be a very good chance that he eventually would come back for
yeah,
similar reasons as the Dame situation, right? Because
right,
no
right.
matter even if he is traded this summer, I think there's always going to be just a massive amount of goodwill, and like, who knows what kind of happens. But again, probably not worth talking about Giannis's second time before his first one is over.
Well, and Camille and I alluded to this on one of the more recent shows too, and I was talking about it with someone else too about the whole notion of could he put his thumb on the scale, and you even brought it up of I'm sure there's going to be a preferred list of these are the teams that I would sign an extension with. Um, there's a couple of interesting components to that because, like, on the one hand, you can say, well, if he makes it clear, like, I only want to play for these teams, I'm only going to sign an extension with these teams, then you're kind of screwed. Now you could pull him aside and just say, I'm going to call your bluff because nothing I've seen from you leads me to believe you are going to leave that amount of money on the table and just say, okay, well, I'm leaving in free agency and going and signing with this team that I wanted to. But it just means what that team is willing to offer you is not going to be quite as much, or any team for that matter. I mean, I would still have a hard time seeing Giannis end up at a destination that wasn't on his preferred list and him just saying, screw it, I'm leaving in free agency anyway, and taking a lesser amount and not what I can sign for the Supermax. But it also, for that team, it doesn't mean that, okay, I'll do this and I'm going to sign the extension, but I'm going to ask to be traded next season or in the summer when I can be traded 6 months later.
And he has a bit of insurance as well, in the sense that
All
he
the
can
call
opt
sheet
out.
ads and everything else. And
Well, he can opt out next summer,
yeah,
but I mean, if he, like, whatever, got injured or for some reason, didn't want to do the free agency thing, like, I mean, he could play out his contract as well. I think that would probably be a very,
yeah,
I can't really imagine that scenario playing out, because I think if he's someplace that he wants to say, then he'll just get the extension and he'll sign it. It would really be more of the, like, if he has a season-ending injury, then, like, does that team suddenly, like, not want to commit to him or something?
yeah.
But that would be kind of like a disaster scenario that certainly, like, none of us, would want, regardless of whether he was on the Bucks at any point. I will certainly be, rooting for him wherever he goes. I would even root for the Celtics, Justin. That's how loyal I am to Giannis. When the Celtics are a team, I lived in Boston for 15 years and hated the Celtics and still hate the Celtics. But
Yeah,
If
I'm
Giannis
not gonna
somehow ended
join you
up
there.
there, if Giannis somehow ended up in Boston, I think I would have to hope for good things for the Celtics, especially because honestly, at that point, like it's not like the Bucks are like going to be meeting them in the playoffs or something. So,
Who knows? Who knows?
so we'll
I'm
see.
not gonna go that far either in some of my dealings with the Boston Celtics. I'll say no. I'm not going to root for them, even if Giannis is on the team at that point. Yeah, I mean, it's what May 12th. So the good news, Frank, is we've only got 6 more weeks of this to continue to hear that. Oh, this and that's the other funny thing too. Was it Boston that some of the reporting now? Well, this team also called the Bucks at the deadline about Giannis. Like, oh, so we'll just keep adding to the list throughout the summer of. Well, this team did check in on him at the deadline, and they've always shown an interest in him. Like, at one point, are we going to start to get the Mavericks rumors of they would love to pair up Giannis with Cooper Flag and Chris is there and Messiah's always loved him?
They would love to reacquire Luca and then add Giannis, and we could have the Luca
Well,
Giannis show
the
in Dallas.
report earlier today too of Lucas told the Lakers he would prefer Austin Reeves not be included in a deal for Giannis. Like, oh, okay, well, I think we can get there without him.
Yeah. Um, can we talk about the draft lottery for a moment? Do
Yeah.
we need to take a break before we do that? Or
Uh, you know what? We'll do this. We'll do an extra whatever it is on the draft lottery. So we'll end it here. We'll do a separate portion of it on the draft lottery. So look for that immediately after you find this one. So part 2 of this discussion exclusively on the draft lottery coming up momentarily.